Well, do you know what? We're still at it. We're still waiting, and we're hoping, as all fans are hoping, that something's going to happen. But the wait for Star Trek 4 with Chris Pine has been long, frustrating, and full of rumours. It's almost become an almost unbearable thing to keep waiting for a film that there's nothing being said about. But is hope completely lost? Well, in this video, we're diving into everything we know so far about the highly anticipated sequel, where the project currently stands, which familiar faces are likely to return, and the exciting story possibilities that could finally bring the Kelvin timeline crew back to the big screen. Now, if you've been craving answers, this is the update that you've been waiting for. Oh yes. So let's move on. Star Trek 4. Will it happen? Well, that's a flipping good question. It's the question Star Trek fans have been asking for nearly a decade. What's going on with Star Trek 4? Is it still happening? Will Chris Pine suit up again as Captain Kirk? Will Star Trek 4 ever happen? It's the question Star Trek fans have been asking for nearly a decade. What's going on with Star Trek 4? Is it still happening? Will Chris Pine suit up again as Captain Kirk? Will we ever return to the Kelvin timeline? Where it gets even more complicated is that no one person has been able to answer that question. So, let's rewind a bit. The rebooted Star Trek film series, often referred to as the Kelvin timeline, first launched in 2009 with J.J. Abrams at the helm. That first movie was a sleek, action-heavy reinvention that brought in a brand new cast, including Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, and Carl Urban. It was a hit, both critically and commercially. The sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness in 2013, followed suit, but things took a bit of a turn with 2016's Star Trek Beyond. A fan favourite, yes, but one that underperformed at the box office. And that's when the long, strange journey of Star Trek 4 really began. You see, even though Beyond struggled financially, interest in a fourth film never truly died. In fact, it seemed almost inevitable for a while, but somewhere along the way, Paramount's focus shifted. Instead of heading back to theatres, Star Trek doubled down on the small screen. Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds became the new face of the franchise, and the big screen future of Starfleet, well, it started to feel like it was drifting further and further out of reach. Still, the possibility of Star Trek 4 never fully disappeared. There have been constant rumblings, many script rewrites and more than a few creative shakeups over the years. At one point there was even talk of Quentin Tarantino directing a Star Trek film. Yes, seriously. Now, that version didn't pan out, but it shows just how many directions this project has been pulled in. The most recent updates, however, suggest that Star Trek 4 isn't completely lost in space. In fact, there are signs of life, which is actually a good thing. So, is Star Trek 4 happening? Well, stay with us. We're going to talk about much more. Let's start with the cast. If Star Trek 4 really does happen, there's one thing fans are hoping for above all else: the return of the original Kelvin timeline crew. So far, there's been no official cast announcement, but we've got a pretty good idea of who's likely to show up on the bridge of the Enterprise. Zachary Quinto has been vocal about his love for the franchise, and all signs point to him stepping back into Spock's shoes. That alone is a big win. His performance has always been one of the standouts of the reboot series. Chris Pine is a bit more of a mystery. While he has expressed confusion about the movie's development, he's never ruled out returning. And let's be real, what's a Kelvin timeline movie without Captain Kirk, right? It's hard to imagine Star Trek 4 moving ahead without Pine at the helm. Very odd. Zoe Saldana is the only cast member so far to outright confirm her involvement. She's signed on and ready to return as Uhura, though she's always been honest about not putting her life on hold waiting for the film to come together. Still, if she's back, it's a safe bet that Carl Urban, Bones, Simon Pegg, Scotty and John Cho's Sulu could be just a call away. Plus, she's a major star with a packed schedule, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avatar, etc. So her presence on the call sheet means things are at least semi-serious. But you know what? There's one name that won't be on the call sheet, and it's a painful one. Anton Yelchin, who played Pavel Chekhov in the first 3 movies, tragically passed away in 2016. At the time, J.J. Abrams made it clear that the role would not be recast. There's no replacing him, Abrams said. Anton deserves better. And you know what? That's a sentiment that still holds true. If Star Trek IV happens, fans are hoping the film will find a way to honour Yelchin, whether that's through a heartfelt tribute or simply acknowledging Chekhov's absence in a respectful way. Now that would be nice, wouldn't it? There's always a possibility, though, that a new character from Trek lore could join the crew to fill that void, but it would have to be done with care and with the understanding that no one could ever truly replace Anton Yelchin's presence on that bridge. So that's something we've got to look forward to, I guess. And now back to Chris Pine. Well, like I said, he seems, well, confused, honestly. When asked recently if he had any updates on Star Trek IV, his answer was a simple, not that I know of. And no, he hasn't read a script either. Pine also admitted he was surprised to hear a new writer had been brought in, saying he thought the film already had a script. Turns out that version may have been shelved or scrapped entirely. So confusion reigns, basically. So, who is writing Star Trek IV now then, as this seems to be moving very, very slowly? That, by the way, would be Steve Yockey, the creator of The Flight Attendant and Dead Boy Detectives. Yockey was hired to take a fresh crack at the story, which is rumoured to be a final chapter for the Kelvin crew. The previous version of the scripts reportedly included a time travel storyline, where Captain Kirk would team up with his father George Kirk, played by none other than Chris Hemsworth. That concept generated a ton of buzz, as you can imagine, but it seems to have faded from the conversation, which is quite sad. Even Lindsay Anderson Beer, one of the former writers attached to the film, chimed in recently. She told Collider that the project is still on the tracks, even though she had to leave the writing team to pursue another directing opportunity. That's reassuring, if somewhat vague, I guess. And to make matters more complicated, like we need that, the movie still hasn't been officially greenlit by Paramount. So while development continues in various forms, there's no set release date, no start of production, and guess what? No guarantees it will actually see this thing materialise. But hope isn't entirely lost, is it? After all, we're Trek fans. In fact, one recent Hollywood Reporter article shed some light on Paramount's continued interest in making Star Trek IV happen. The studio reportedly still sees the Kelvin timeline as valuable IP, and they want the next film to strike the same kind of balance between heart, action, and spectacle that made the 2009 reboot so successful. That means there's likely still a budget, still some enthusiasm behind the scenes, and still conversations happening, albeit very slowly. And here's the kicker: with streaming platforms like Paramount Plus thriving on Star Trek content, there's a unique opportunity to bridge the film and TV worlds more seamlessly than ever. I mean, could Star Trek IV serve as a capstone to the Kelvin timeline and a springboard into something new? Well, it's possible, but until cameras roll, we're in wait and see mode. So be patient. So what do we know about Star Trek IV's plot details? Well, as for the plot of Star Trek IV, that's still very much a mystery. Over the years, countless ideas have been tossed around, some wild, some grounded, and a few that actually made it pretty far into development. Now, one of the most talked about concepts was a time travel story that would reunite Kirk with his father, George Kirk, played by Chris Hemsworth. That idea got fans buzzing, but it eventually fell apart. Reportedly over salary disagreements of all things, and Hemsworth's lack of confidence in the script, of course. That was a big part as well. Other concepts have come and gone, with names like Quentin Tarantino and Noah Hawley attached to different points. Tarantino's version was said to be R-rated, something that had longtime fans equal, parts curious and parts cautious. There's even a draft out there by the Revenant writer Mark L. Smith, but with each new wave of development, another version seemed to get left behind. Oh gosh, these writers. So what's left? According to those still close to the project, like Lindsay Anderson Beer, Star Trek IV is still alive. It's just evolving again. That means the final story could pull from earlier versions, yay, or start fresh entirely, equally yay, who cares as long as it starts, right? Either way, the potential is there to give the Kelvin crew one last meaningful adventure. So, where does that leave us, the Trek fans? Well, in limbo, basically. Star Trek 4 has become one of Hollywood's great almosts, a movie that everyone wants, everyone's kind of working on, but no one can quite make happen. Whether it's delays due to scheduling, creative shifts, or shifting studio priorities, this sequel has been orbiting development hell for nearly a decade. We're so patient. At this point, Star Trek 4 has officially been pulled from Paramount's release schedule. Now, don't worry, that doesn't mean it's dead, but it's definitely not close to filming either. The studio is still working behind the scenes to get it off the ground, but for now there's no release date and no confirmed production timeline. I hate saying that. Still, the stars are aligned, literally and figuratively. The cast is willing, the fans are eager, and the franchise is very much alive on TV. All that's left is for someone at Paramount to push the button and make it official. But guess what? Until then, we'll be here, waiting, watching the stars, and hoping that one day soon the Kelvin crew will hear those magical words again, "Warp speed, Mr. Sulu." So while we may not be boldly going anywhere just yet, we're not done hoping, are we? Thanks very much for watching. Let's hope in the next one I can give you more of an update on what's happening with Star Trek 4. Make sure that you comment down below and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.